Well, we're going to be talking. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
All right, folks, we're going to call this meeting to order. The June 10th, 2021 Common Council, City of Plattsburgh, New York Finance Committee, Finance and Community Development. I will note that all members of the committee are here except for Mr. McFarland, who is on his way. The first order of business, I'll have an approval of the minutes of the May 13th, 2021 Finance and Community Development Committee. Take a motion. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Are there any deletions, changes, or additions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second item on the agenda, community development, draft resolution authorizing subordination agreement with Champlain National Bank. Motion. Councilor Canal, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion.
Yes, I didn't see this supporting documentation. I saw the resolution title, but I didn't see the supporting documentation. So I just got this a couple of minutes ago. Can I get an explanation?
If it was attached on Monday.
I did. I looked. I didn't see it. So if I get an explanation.
Yeah, the owner of this building is changing. I believe they're changing financing, and as part of their agreement with the City of Plattsburgh for the downtown grant program, they need to also have people pay for it on file with the City of Plattsburgh State. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Draft 2.2 draft resolution authorizing new planning board fee schedule. Motion. Sorry. Thank you. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canal. Discussion.
Yes, can we get some background information on the decision to do this? And
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. And Melena and Matt are both here to help chime in when I kind of mess this up. The planning board right now has no fees.
We have one fee for one action.
One fee for one action. This is a fee schedule update compared to other regional municipalities, consistent with, say, like town and other local municipalities for planning board action. This essentially just brings us up to date with some type of fee schedule for seeing those actions through the planning board. Did that answer your question?
mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call. I'm sorry. All in favor?
Yes.
Sorry. Opposed? Carried. 2.3 draft resolution. Draft resolution update City Beach entry fee schedule. Motion. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion.
So when is the last time that the fee schedule was increased?
Late 2019.
And so,
And I believe it was requested, but was it increased in 2019?
Yeah, so prior to 2019, the last time the beach fees had been increased was roughly a decade prior to that. In the spring of 2019, fees were increased at the request of the recreation complex to generate some additional revenue and account for the accumulated effects of inflation of the previous decade. Council approved those fees. Later in 2019, as part of the council's efforts to reduce the structural deficit that existed in the rec complex for several years, have requested updated fee structures for all major rec facilities from the Community Development Office, which we submitted to the council. The fee structure, the updated one for the gym, was passed at the end of 2019. The intention was to pass this updated fee schedule for the beach in the spring of 2020, but with the COVID pandemic, everything got shelved, which is why we're here.
Okay, and so city residents and town residents still no charge?
Correct.
Correct.
And as you can see, there was an actual walk-on fee, which we're eliminating.
Oh,
For a number of reasons, there's no way to enforce it, to be honest. And we're not gonna just enforce it like people who walk by the gate. That's kind of ridiculous. You guys are done?
Yeah.
Got it? Because-
So
I need a little more room, so I'm not quite.
Yeah, no, you're good.
So the resolution says you can go to the city clerk's office, but in years past, actually, that's been done at the booth.
Yeah,
Is that
so,
continue to be done?
yeah, so I had an email exchange with Mr. Miller and Ms. Garrett today regarding where to get those passes. We're gonna come back next week and work that out.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, presentation of the bike infrastructure plan.
Okay. So Ethan and I are
Great,
here.
thank you for dressing up.
I know, I'm cool.
Good job.
We don't want to take, I know, we didn't expect it. We don't want to take a lot of your time, but we just kind of wanted to walk quickly through the bike plan that we built for the city. In hopes of this being implemented over the next couple of years to make Plattsburgh more bike friendly. The name of the report is Bike Friendly Plattsburgh. It's a phased approach, with phase one being retrofitting of existing streets to add bike lanes and trails where appropriate. Can you not figure out? And phase two of the 3R report requires additional reconstruction of streets, and other large scale improvements, which are more costly, which is why we did this in a phased approach to make this like a feasible plan to actually develop in the next couple of years. So we all know the benefits of bicycling, environmental benefits, of course, which support the city's goals to be a climate smart community, creating more vibrant communities, of course, getting people in and on the streets versus driving through and by, creating safer streets, obviously increased activity in the streets equals slower traffic, better health. We all know we need to have more exercise in our daily lives. It's less of a strain on the healthcare system. And then increased inclusivity and equity for residents. So I looked up online, and the average American spent approximately $10,000 a year on transportation costs for a car. The average annual income in the city of Plattsburgh is 20% lower than the state average. So I think it's super important for the city to address equity in the city and prioritize a multimodal transportation system to get people going where they need to go. So of course, the benefits of bicycling, plus all the amenities that the city has, we're on the shores of Lake Champlain, we're on the Santa River, we have great existing infrastructure. We have the SRTT Phase 2, we have the Empire State Trail, we have the Terry Gordon Bike Path, the Terry Victoria Bike Path. So it's just basically building off our existing infrastructure, creating a complete connectivity network to move people east and west, north and south in a safe way. We really don't have a lot of bike infrastructure right now. I believe we have about 11 miles in the city. So our proposed plan creates an additional 12 miles across all three phases. Our city's only 5 square miles, so I think the average mile to ride a bike is about 6 minutes a mile. So you can really bike our whole city in 30 minutes. So it should be bikeable, right? Yeah. What? You can do it. Everybody can do it.
I'm not sure about
No rush, you take 12.
So our plan, like I said, is a phased plan. We also took a look at best practices. So we looked up DOT best practices, Federal Highway Administration, the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And our plan is very comprehensive in that we not only have a vision for the city, but it's actually an implementation action plan. So these are the different bike facilities that are feasible. This is how you can implement them so that DPW can actually take this plan, go out on the street and say, okay, this is the street that was identified. This is where a bike lane would work. And this is, we have to make the lane 5 feet. We need to put sharrows 150 feet from the curb. Like It's very, very comprehensive so that it actually can be implemented. And last but not least, we actually reached out to the community, did a community survey. We got over 400 responses from the community, which I think is huge. It was actually more than our comp plan survey that we did. So people are very interested in this. They want to see this happen. And obviously we want to know where are people going, because it's great for us to identify where it's feasible to put bike routes, but if it's not getting people where they want to go, then what's the point? So we got a lot of great feedback, and we implemented those recommendations into our phased approach. So it reflects both feasibility, retrofit, and the community's feedback. So that's how we kind of developed these different phases for the plan. So it's a mix of bike lanes, sharrows, which I know are not the answer to everything, but they do increase awareness, and it's much easier, it's much cheaper than reconstructing an entire street, right? So adding sharrows and signage will help increase safety and get people where they need to go. We also identified traffic generator destinations, so schools, parks, commercial districts, to try and also create that map of connectivity. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to Ethan so you can actually go through the different phases and what streets were identified, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so you see here we have phase one. So phase one is a lot of retrofitting our existing infrastructure that we have in the streets. As we know, our streets can be narrow, there's limitations. We're not gonna be able to, at least in this phase, go out and just rebuild every road just to make sure it's bike friendly. So this is a good starting spot based on some of the, a lot of information we just mentioned. So we're looking at streets like Rinkerhoff, Court Street, Oak Street, North Catherine, that are typically one ways. And what we're going to do, and what our proposal is for adding sharrows in that right lane. So start getting that, building that dedicated, get the eyes on the street, more bike infrastructure in place there.
What's a sharrow?
So it is essentially when you click on, when you go on Cumberland Avenue, it's those bikes. It's the symbol of the bike with
Oh,
the
okay.
arrows.
Okay.
So I'm sure when you guys have any other questions or comments too, because I know Pat is a big fan of sharrows.
Right.
It's a shared use lane. It's not a dedicated lane, but it's shared use, and it increases awareness, it slows down traffic, and it makes bikers feel more comfortable.
And so we're also, other areas that we're looking at is, section of Market Street from the intersection of Boynton to Elm, on at least in the first phase. Small connectors with, Caroline Street, Saranac Street, with the SRT base that's about to be completed, hopefully later this fall. Dock Street, Green Street, Elizabeth Street, Underwood, to help get people connected to that area. Other areas, one of the big flashing points is, I know Elaine is super excited about this idea of the bike boulevard, which we're proposing for Park Avenue West. To really drive people up instead of biking up Cornelia or Broad Street, bike up Park Ave West, get up to the Hogan area, which is being repaved, and there's going to be other bike areas, like the sharrows there, which can connect people to the shopping areas. But that's the general gist for phase one. It's really just those retrofitting. So now in this phase, there's a good chunk of the sharrows and the bike lanes. I think it's under 3 miles of bike lanes proposed and about 6 miles of sharrows. Obviously, as we go further in the future, that changes a little bit. That's just.
Before we move on, like Ethan said, bike boulevards are my favorite thing, because it's setting a priority for bikers that's equal with automobiles. And the reason for a bike boulevard is to get people off of those arterials, which, obviously people want to ride Cumberland Street because it's a direct connection to the commercial district, but it's not safe. The average traffic volume is between 7,000 and 10,000 cars a day. So the bike boulevard will redirect that traffic, make it a formal bike boulevard, and still get people to where they want to go.
That's good, because there's a lot of people still using their bikes.
There
There's
is.
sidewalks, which is
Yep.
extremely dangerous.
Yep.
And where I live on River Street, there's, it's an incline, and lots and lots of people just like zooming down
Zooming
their
down.
scooters, and they're on sidewalks,
Yep.
and that's really dangerous, so I would love to see more. Now, when do you anticipate this will be completed?
So we'll get to the costs for phase one after you can go through phase two and three. So it's really up to council, their dedication to funding this. And we also have opportunities for funding in our proposal. There's state, there's local, there's federal opportunities for funding that can help supplement the phase.
Yep. And then phase two is really just a little bit more of road reconstruction in areas that we've identified. There's been discussion about the reconstruction of Margaret Street. Peru Street to connect to the existing bike path and the Terry Gordon bike path and the bike path along the US Ave. One of the big identified both in the public comments and for what roads would like to be improved and roads that they ride on now, and the most dangerous road to ride a bike on is South Cap, with the most accidents the last 5 years. You know, right now, we went out on the street, we measured the roads, we did a lot of things, and we found out that as much as we'd love to include South Cap Street in phase one, it's due to the traffic and other sort of safety considerations, we just couldn't do it at that point. But looking into potential, what can we do to South Cap and a reconstruction would be a good way to bring people up there, because at the end of the day, people are going to ride the shortest route possible, and we can incentivize people to go different directions, but due to the safety concerns in South Catherine Street, it's something that we recommended to focus in on in the future phase.
Definitely a priority for phase two. I mean, it's connecting South Plattsburgh, so, I mean, equity as a priority, connecting South Plattsburgh to downtown is huge. Like Ethan said, the community identified that as the #1 road that they're using, and we reached out to the police department, we got accident data. It's the #1, street for bicycle accidents, so it really needs to be a priority for phase two, but it's expensive, there isn't why it's not phase one.
And another section would be Ruger Street to continue that connection, the existing bike paths that's right next to the college further up. Connecting those neighborhoods.
Yep, and the town of Plattsburgh is actually going after a CFA to do the traffic light on Anderson Drive, and they're planning on doing additional improvements along Ruger. So for phase two, it would be great to kind of meet up with the town of Plattsburgh improvements on Ruger Street to create that connectivity.
And the final phase that we have involves 3 streets. It's in red here. It would be Boynton, Cornelia, and Broad Street. So those are, once again, very highly identified usage and desire for future improvements. Once again, there's limitations. It's against a lot of recommendations just to go and make some rash decisions. So we're looking at potential reconstructions of maybe a road diet on Broad Street in the future. Really build that, Molina likes the phrase town to gown relationship. So really building that Broad Street corridor up to connecting the college to the downtown. Cornelia Street, of course, because of the direct connection to the shopping and our downtown, and obviously the various wards around. And Boynton Street was identified as well. As you see in this final version, one of the things it does is there's a path to pretty much connecting every ward and interconnecting. So it really builds upon that connectivity that the public really seem to desire in our feedback, and it builds upon some of that safety by infrastructure, which about 50% of people, well, actually, I think it's over 9% of our respondents out of that almost 400 said they'd be more likely to ride bikes with additional infrastructure. And that shows that demand is pent up that we could tap into.
We reached out to Alta Planning to get some data from them about the Empire State Trail that goes to the city, and they were basically like, well, we don't really have a lot of data. Our theory is if you build it, they will come. So I think typically cities will invest in bike infrastructure and see that the outcome is more people are riding bikes. So unfortunately, you need to take a chance, invest in it, but the results show that people will start riding bikes more and creating that bike for the city.
And I think it's just with all this right now, it's just recommendations, right? There's going to be different priorities that are going to come up, and there can be changes, but this is just based on public input. A lot of data from local, state, regional sources, and just our own research in the streets. So things could change. This isn't exactly how it's all going to end up, but as Milena said, at least more specifically with phase one, it's very, very much an implementation plan if the council chooses to move in that direction or wants to pick and choose certain aspects as well.
And back to phase one, we recently received a grant opportunity for People for Bikes. If we went after that grant, I believe it's up to $10,000. It is competitive, but the award would be sometime in October. So potentially we could implement phase one in the spring if the council was willing to match those funds for that. And like we said, phase one is mostly retrofit. And we did a quick estimation of what phase one would cost. And we're looking at probably about $40,000 for striping, labor, and signage for phase one.
And
Say that number again.
40,000?
there will be some ongoing costs, of course, of the maintenance of the actual.
Are there other improvements for bikes around the city that you guys are planning on? Like, I know one that's come up before is more
places to lock your bike or
Yeah.
store your bike or things like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, one of the, earlier this year, in partnership with Mountain North, there was a place like a place we can have
Yeah.
for more artistic, bike, locking structures that are gonna be deposited throughout our downtown, and then also we're in the process of, creating like a more centralized parking lot, using the, vendor stalls on Upper Bridge Street.
And the last part of our report is actually about ongoing strategies. So we're recommending additional efforts after phase one is implemented. So, creating and updating an interactive map on our website so people know where the bike infrastructure is. They can figure out, where they're going online, on their phone, whatever it is. Providing additional bike parking, additional wayfinding signage, marketing and community engagement to continue to build the system, and then annual bike safety courses. I know the police department sometimes does that, partners with town of Plattsburgh. Bike events like bike races in the city, closing off the streets on Sundays to do events like that. And also looking at bike share systems or scooter share, like Lime bikes, just creating like a whole bike-friendly community around the infrastructure. Yeah, that's our report. So we're hoping
Yeah,
to,
appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely, implement that in the next couple of years, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I like the shirt.
Thank you.
Time constraint, given the time constraint, we want to move to the more, probably one of the most significant pieces on our agenda, which is 4.1 and 4.2. Just note 4.1 is not a, it's not a referendum that 4.2 then needs to pass, but it is going to be required if 4.2 doesn't pass. So I will take a motion to, for draft resolution approval of secret findings for proposed purchase of real property. Motion by Councilor Canal, second. Councilor Gibbs. Again, this is not a referendum. It doesn't mean that we have to pass 4.2, but it will be required if 4.2 does pass.
And just to be clear, we'll run through part 2 of the secret form at the formal meeting next week. If that is the case.
If 4.2 carries.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. Roll call. Can you roll call to clarify only for?
Councilor Canal?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
No.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yeah.
Councilor Talon? Yes. Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
No. Carried. 2 minutes, please. To bring us to 4.2 draft resolution authorizing the mayor signing purchase agreement for real property, PDD. Motion. Councilor Gibbs, second. Councilor Canales. Discussion. So, yes. So, if you don't mind, I'll kick it off. Yeah, thank you. A lot of you have heard the proposal for the city of Plattsburgh to enter into a purchase agreement with the Plattsburgh Boat Basin International Incorporated. Part of that, a lot of the justification has been out there, it's been pretty public. I know it has certainly been a difficult conversation. I think the number of conversations I've had regarding this, people are on the fence, and it's understandable. It's a big number. It's a complex process. It's a complex deal. One thing that I would ask is that regardless of where you stand, regardless of what your position is, that we please just have a respectful, civil dialogue about it. We understand that people are pretty either all in or all out. And there are certain people that are kind of still on the fence with it. So we're hoping to address some of those questions, not only with the council here, but we can see that this is a pretty important issue for a lot of us, which are sitting here in public too. So with that, I would, even though it's not conventional, I'd like to open it up to public comment. If you don't mind.
I like that idea. I'm cool with it.
I agree.
Yeah, is that all right? Yeah, I think that's fair, but I would certainly like to open up the public comment, and just like always, please keep it civil. I don't have a timer. I have a timer, and I'm not gonna put a timer on, but just please be respectful. Yeah, just please be respectful of the time, because if there are a number of people that do want to talk, I want to make sure that everybody can get their voices heard, get their concerns expressed. Normally, we wouldn't have a back and forth question and answer. If there's something that we can answer, we certainly will. We probably will get some of that, those questions and concerns answered one way or the other as part of this time. So, podium's open, for anybody who would like to step up and chime in on, purchase of real property.
I was really hoping I didn't have to be first.
Yeah.
I have not actually ever used, but it's something that I feel strongly about. My name is Mandy. I am not a resident of the city, but I am a property owner. I own 31 Durfee Street. I am a disaster and business transition consultant with the Small Business Development Center and the Center for Business and Transition. I work with business buyers and sellers on a daily basis, helping them to navigate the process that we all could be going through. I am here as a private citizen. I am not representing the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, or the Center for Businesses in Transition, but I do want to endorse moving forward with this to the next step. I think it's a good classes in the notes. I think it's a once in a long-time opportunity for Plattsburgh to do something that's really exciting. For the Lake City, right? Like we have a relationship with the lake. I'm very fortunate that I grew up, and I'm born and raised here. I grew up enjoying the lake, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for Plattsburgh, the city, the people of Plattsburgh to have a much better relationship with the water and all that Lake Champlain has to offer us. I think it's one of our best assets. With it goes a lot of responsibility, for sure. There's certainly a fair amount of risk. The initial rush shows that there's the potential for $250,000 in profit. That's a pretty big number, and that's even before you take into account the economies of scale that could be garnered when you assign kind of leadership, management, administration across multiple marinas, the city marina, Plattsburgh Boat Basin, and potentially Bullcox Dock. Additionally, there have been constraints on the city marina to expand and grow as it was originally planned, and this would provide an opportunity for those expansion when the time is right to move forward. It absolutely needs to be better. In the private sector world, it's due diligence, right? It's taking a very deep dive into the financials, the operations, all of the things that people that have concerns about moving forward peel back the onion and understand. Hopefully in that $250,000 profit number, there is a decent amount for marina management. I don't think that the city wants to get into the business of doing the day-to-day management of, maybe they do, I don't know, but it seems like a big nut, right? It's a very specialty type of the world. I'm a boater, I grew up boating, and yeah, there's a whole lot that goes into it. I think you want to dig in on the valuation that was done on the property, like the asset allocation, with the different pieces, the goodwill, the equipment, all of that good stuff. I think you would want to run multiple scenarios. I imagine the scenario that was created with the $250,000 in profit is a fairly conservative, right? I don't know. But I would say you would want to run worst case scenario, best case scenario, like if everything goes as planned, what's the best case scenario? So that, again, you have these different scenarios that you can look at. So I kind of say, why not move forward, right? Like there would be contingencies. So if stuff was uncovered that people felt uncomfortable with, there would be an out. But at this time, I say it's a tremendous opportunity for Plattsburgh, and why not move forward?
Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you.
And anyone else, I mean, this is the opportunity to jump in, and if you have a comment about this project, or, I mean, like, I'm sure that we even entertain questions to clarify. We normally don't, but.
That's up to you. You're the chair.
Yeah, right, so, even if there's some questions to clarify that. And you can do that.
Ward 2. I'm all for waterfront. I'm all for Lake Champlain. Anybody that knows me knows that, but one, we've already tried this. it was not successful. Please look at your former data. Look at the numbers, run the numbers, run the data. There's some new counselors, go back and look at the city data. We've already done this and it didn't turn out well. Please, we have this information. Please do your homework and look at this. I sit at the marina now before it gets too hot. There's some nice docks out there, but we're not allowed on those docks. Those docks are for people paying. The boat launch is for the boats. There's a sign there. Only the boats can go where there's docks there. I sat there once and I saw the sign. I wasn't thrown off. Those are specific things. I do not think this is feasible at this time. We have lots of waterfront. On the base, all the way down, if you want development, start with what we have. We've got a beautiful beach. The West End needs help. Start with that. We need a crate center for kids that needs renovations. The old beach house over at the beach needs to be torn down. That's not going to be cheap. There's lots of places we need to spend the money. 7 million can spend a lot of money fixing up what we have. We have all kinds of lakefront right behind the recreation center. What about looking at that first? Please look at everything before you jump into this. Yes, it would be nice. Yes, long range. But we did this already, and we lost money. It wasn't that long ago. And I've been watching some emails go back and forth. I looked up millennium. Some of the three words that millennial means is romantic, visionary, and revolutionary. Those are all nice words, but romantic is not the word I use for $7.2 million. Again, look at everything. There's nothing I'd like better to have all the waterfront, but the waterfront we have that we own is not accessible. I've been up here before saying this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Make a comment? Council.
Yeah, I have some comments. I want to make it really clear that I support economic development and I want the city to thrive. I am very intrigued by the idea that we could make our waterfront whole. We could have this 11-ish acres. I think that is a very intriguing idea, and it does hold a lot of potential. I think that we can all agree on that. But there isn't anybody in this room who's an expert on purchasing $7 million or developing $7 million. None of us sitting at this table have that kind of experience.
I do.
If you do,
yes.
good for you.
Elizabeth, yeah, that was my career.
So-
That's a long time.
I don't think anybody here has 7 million development on waterfront experience. So this information came out in public and I'm being contacted and people are calling me and I'm being provided with information on areas of this nature, the waterfront development, purchasing of this large business. I didn't know. And I think that's something that I learned over the last couple of weeks. We need to know what we don't know. I don't want to learn on the fly at the risk to the taxpayers. And I certainly don't want to hurry through this in 2 months. I fully recognize we have this due diligence period, but it's a short amount of time to try and get everything that we need. I think one of the first things that we should be doing is assemble questions as a council, and we haven't even done that. As a whole governing body, make a whole list of questions and concerns and figure out how we're going to get the answers to those things. I think that we need an advisor who is an expert in this area to help us work through it. I think that, and somebody would have our interest to go after the questions that we probably don't even know how to ask. I mean, some of my questions are, I think there needs to be a feasibility study. Is this actually feasible and sustainable? I mean, today in the paper you referenced the 2017 FRB study, but that's 2017. What does it say post-COVID? What does that look like? There needs to be a cost-benefit analysis. What about environmental impact analysis? We don't know what's underneath that ground. We could purchase the property and uncover something we didn't know was there, that no one knows is there. What about an Army Corps of Engineers study? I mean, I think there are so many unknowns at this point before we enter into any kind of financial agreement. And I want to make myself clear again. I am in favor for development. I think this is a very intriguing and a very interesting idea, but I think there are so many things that we don't know about how to do this that I'm not willing to take those risks. And so that's just where I stand.
Luckily for us, we have someone in the audience that decided to get up first and give her expertise up front of what she does. So I would vote yes for you to be the one to help us with this. Concerning this whole entire agreement that we're looking to do, feasibility and the like, saying that we've done this before is not true. It's not honest. What was done before was poorly done. This is being done properly. There are so many different scenarios that we can go into as to why this isn't good, why this is good, so on and so forth. And let's just for a second, please spare us all with well, it's a post-pandemic world. If that's the case and you want to go after that, look at the amount of money being spent on boats, ski-doos, and the like right now. It is out of this world astronomical. Nobody can keep anything in the lot, on the show floor, or the like. And I'm not talking about nationally, I'm talking about here locally. People that have had years of struggle with sales of their boats and getting people in their marinas fully packed. Just go look. This is a revenue producing business immediately. The return on investment will be immediate. Now, someone made a reference earlier to the revenue or not being able to go to the docks. That's because it's private right now. If it becomes public, you'd be able to go. There's
public marina, Jamie. There are signs at the public marina that say
Okay.
no trespassing.
Well, that's something that needs to be addressed now. The beachfront, there's 3.17 acres. We go on GIS and you map it out. There's 3.17 acres of this land that can be given over to development. That is prime real estate. Last time I checked, there's no more lakefront being built. But like that, it is what it is. So that can be sold to the highest bidder to develop condos and do whatever it is they want to do. There are grants. Everybody's getting wrapped around the axle about the price tag. The cost is going to be 7.25, whatever it is, but the worth is double that. It absolutely is. I would love to see an appraisal of this plot of land. There's grants, federal grants out there for municipalities that own marinas to help rebuild the boating infrastructure, docks, everything else. The council just approved getting a grant writing contracting company to write grants for us. I would put them immediately on getting grants for the boat basin, immediately, and to develop what needs to be done there. I mean, the list goes on and on. If I look at it from a business perspective, this is 6 months worth of revenue right here. 6 months. 6 months. It's a seasonal business, with the exception of those that keep it stored, like, you know, the boat store and everything else. Winterization is revenue income. Gas is revenue. The gas that we as a municipality would be buying would be be at a prorated amount, not what Speedo International is paying right now. So the pros definitely outweigh the cons. The city needs to become revenue producing. How else are we gonna get these bike paths? A portion of the finances from this can go to our parks and our recs, if not a large amount of it, to rebuild all the other portions of our city that need to be built up. The maintenance of the crate and so on and so forth, I agree 100%. But we shouldn't be harping on this administration and a once in a lifetime opportunity, what several administrations decide to have procrastination with. So this is, to me, it's a no-brainer. This is a once in a lifetime deal. Return on investment's immediate. So.
I'd like to make a comment, because I received more correspondence on this particular issue than anything up to this point. But some of the issues that were brought forward to me were, why are we removing the property from the tax rolls when we complain constantly about all the tax exempt properties? I listen to this, and I'm just passing on what other people gave to me. This isn't necessarily all my ideas, but they were very concerned about the impact on city, county, and school district taxes. Not only does this affect city taxes, but this affects school taxes. People are not happy with their school taxes or any taxes for that matter. But I did hear people say, well, this is all going to get passed on, what the school does not get, it's going to be passed on to the homeowners in the city. And I hear them on that. That's a fact. The other thing I heard a lot about was our track record on maintaining infrastructure. This is quite a big piece of infrastructure to add to our city. And we have not done well, and I'm not just speaking about, recent times. If we look at our properties that we have, the Crane Center, the City Beach, the Rec Center, we haven't done well with those over multiple administrations. Okay, so people do, and I hear that too. We are not equipped. We're a municipality, and we're not equipped to run a business like this. And we say, well, we'll just contract that out, but they're not a dime a dozen. There's not a lot of marina operators in the area. And when we bid out for our city marina, the only one that bid was Plattsburgh Boat Basin. The people we had before did a terrible job. You have to look at this realistically. Are we equipped to take on a whole lot more infrastructure that I think, as somebody mentioned, we don't do a good job with what we have. That beach property, I went and walked around there. It's magnificent. I remember when I was younger, a few years ago, they had go-karts down there. They had mini putt. The place was packed. They filled up many motels. We let that slip away. I don't see that we couldn't bring that back. And I really think that's the most developable property in the city right there, and it's all ours. And these are just a few of the things that people brought to me, but I like to focus on these because they are very important issues, and they do affect every single person that lives in the city. Thank you.
I think it all comes down to your morals and your philosophy on what a city should be. And to me, a city should serve as many people as it possibly can. And that means all people at the lowest strata of society to the very highest. And unfortunately, here in our town, the lower strata of society greatly outnumbers the higher strata of society. And that's probably true all over the world too. You see it here a lot in Plattsburgh. You see it in my ward, Ward 2, where I always say this, people get tired of hearing me say this, but people are literally struggling to pay the mortgage, put food on the table, buy the necessary medications they need, to juggling that. The last thing they need is a tax increase. The last thing they need is something that will upset the precarious balance of finance that we have here in this city. We just broke out of a multi-year effort, and some of you were on the council when we did that, to bring our fiscal ship to right. And it was difficult, and I don't want to do it again. I'm so happy that, you know, we're hearing reports from Mayor Rosenquist that we have X number of dollars in grant money since COVID coming in and all sorts of wonderful things. I can't tell you how quickly that can be lost. That, you know, X million dollars that we have in reserve now can be lost in a year easily. And I don't believe that this is a time for us to be taking risks like this. I would say let our financial situation settle. Let us see where we stand as a city financially. Do some long-range planning, which we really need to do before we produce a budget this year. And then see if this is feasible. Now, I like history. I'm a history buff, and I like living history. Been around 67 years, so I've lived some history, and it's been really interesting. And one of the things that happened that I recall was that a previous mayor brought us a sheet very much like this one, and he said, "Oh my goodness, we're going to have a city marina, and it's going to do wonderful. We're going to make a ton of money." So we're like, "Oh, okay. Show us how that's going to work." And he explained that, you know, there certain things have to fall in place, and we'll purchase docks, and we'll have our public works department put it in. We'll hire someone to come do it for us, and we did all that. And I think $100,000 sticks in my mind as possible profit from this thing. Ended up being $100,000 loss. And we met with Mr. Spiegel last week, and he explained to us that we spent too much money on infrastructure. So appreciate that feedback, sir. But I would just say that before we do something like this that benefits maybe a couple hundred voters every year, that we look at what can we do to help out thousands of people. Do you remember I was talking about the morality and the philosophy behind the city? Let's help as many people as we can enjoy a good life. Let's do that. To me, that's a moral objective and a moral mandate. So I look at this, I see we're going to spend $7.2 some million, and we're going to benefit a couple hundred people a year for a few months, not for the whole year. Now, at the Credit Center, on the other hand, which they say needs about $3 million in repair to be really top notch, once again, like it used to be, that we would help thousands of people, 7 days a week, sometimes 14 hours a day, 365 days a year. Enjoy this city. Enjoy its amenities. Now, what's a better bargain? $3 million for the credit, 7.2 for the marina. I'm going credit. Okay? Everybody hear me? I'm going credit. So, again, we've talked about the beach. Wonderful asset to our city. Is it built out as well as it could be? Can we regain its former glory? I'm thinking yes. I'm thinking if we spend $1 million there, we'd have a wonderful beach again, just like the old days. And then I think about, well, the city gym. We hear about the gym, and the folks there at the Y have been so kind to come in and step in and start to offer recreation there again. I'm so happy about that. Aren't you happy, Jamie? Are you happy? I am. You guys happy about that? We all voted for it. I'm very happy about it. I'll tell you what I'm not happy about.
Yeah.
We're lousy landlords. The roof leaks there, the HVAC system doesn't work. We can't serve the public there the way that we should be. And again, that's a location. Thousands of people use that location. We fix the roof, fix the HVAC there, we make it better for the Y to do their business there, and we have happy customers. That's what I'd like to see. And it just goes on and on. We talk about, well, we're gonna open up the waterfront with this 11.8 acres. No, you're not. You're gonna have a marina, and it's gonna be open to boat owners. The rest of the public would be off limits. And we talk also about having some land we're gonna develop. We're gonna take away the boats where they sit, put them on other city land that could be used for something else. And we're gonna develop that property. We're gonna build condos. Well, are condos gonna make the beach more accessible to people? No, no. We got the Sailors Beach just south of there that could be developed and be a wonderful place for people to go, but we can't fix the bridge to get across the railroad track. What a shame, what a shame. We have an old base marina that, for whatever reason, we can't open it up. Maybe because the old docks there are dangerous. There's a nice sandy beach there. Anybody ever been down there? Wonderful place, wonderful. So we already have beachfront that we're not developing. We're not taking proper care of. So don't tell me that buying 11.8 more acres of land is going to do anything for the city. It isn't. I would say to all of us, do what we need to do with what we already have. A final thing I'll tell you is our IT infrastructure is broken. We don't have an email system that works. I couldn't get all the documents I needed on my computer here. I hate printing stuff out because it's a waste of paper, as all of you know. And couldn't have my documents to look at. So I'm having a hard time being an informed person because we have a broken email system. Now you tell me, what's more important, an email system for an enterprise like this or a new marina? Which would you spend money on? Ask yourself that question. And I can go on. We got bathrooms in our city parks. Again, a venue used by thousands every year. Open 365 days a year, 7 days a week. People flock in there for baseball games, soccer games, playground use, and skate park. 5,000 days a year. And we don't have bathrooms at work. We put porta potties in there. What kind of look is that for our city? Ask yourself that question. What kind of look is that for our city? Fix the bathrooms, for God's sakes. Spend a little money there. How much is it going to cost? Whatever it is, it's worth it. You know, my list just goes on and on. We're making a tremendous effort to fix the roads now and pave roads. We're hearing less complaints. We hear about potholes. So there's some great things going on in our city, but I think it's when we think about what do we do for the maximum good. Roads help everybody. Roads help everybody. So I would say to the council, well, what are you getting for $7.2 million? Are you getting a lasting legacy for the city? Nah, I don't think so. Sorry, can't buy that. Are you getting something that may work? Well, it may, but until we have the facts on what that marina's potential is, we don't really know. You know, we thought we had the facts when we built the city marina. It turned out, no, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm sorry to say, but that's what I want you to think about. I guess the morals, the philosophy. What do we do to help the maximum number of people? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other council?
I guess it's my turn.
Doesn't have to.
I'll try to keep it brief. I've heard 6 people talk so far, and I can't really say that any 6 of them have said something I demonstrably disagree with. I agree with Ms. Mannion that I would love a better relationship with our water department. Me and the mayor talk about this all the time. We at the council talk about this all the time. And I agree with her that it absolutely needs to be vetted. Elizabeth said something very similar to that. $7.2 million is an extremely large sum of money. And it is not something that we can risk easily. It is something we need to do our due diligence on. It is bigger than any one project in the DRI. And it's all city taxpayer money. They will be bonded, sure, but that's all going to be backed up by city taxpayer money. So it is a big deal. It is not something we should jump into wildly. It is not something we should jump into without being certain. The difference, I would say, I agree with everything Mike said about there's a lot of problems in our city and they need to be fixed. We've been up there harping about it when we haven't had the money to fix them. We have, I think on our fund balance now, we have what, $4.4 million, give or take. And when I became on the council, when I joined the council at the beginning of 2018, it was drastically lower than that. And we've been saving. And the one thing I can see is, I also agree with Mike that we have been terrible landlords. We have been horrible at maintaining our infrastructure. The city beach is a beautiful asset, and you know, for decades it's deteriorated. The crate, same thing. Gym, same thing. The difference here is as far as fixing those assets and purchasing this asset, I don't see this asset as a way to bring the greater good. Because I agree with you. The beach is more important than a marina. The crate is more important than a marina. The success of this project comes on an investment. And as Ms. Mannion pointed out, and as Jamie pointed out, if this asset, if this purchase brings in $250,000 a year in profit, and I agree with Jamie, it's a no-brainer. Because we can use that $250,000 a year to do all the things Mike pointed out, to fix all our stuff, to help this city. We've had a lot of people come in this city and say, we need more revenue. We can't just raise taxes, find ways to make revenue. And I agree with that 100%, if we can find a way to make revenue. The counterpoint to that is it's an if. I don't know anything about running a marina. I don't think I ever will, to be honest. And so it's an if. If we lose money on this marina, it is a terrible risk to take for the taxpayers, and it will backfire tremendously. But if it is successful, if it's a worthwhile venture and we can make money to help our city, $250,000 is about what we were putting in our surplus every year to get our fund balance up where it was. Recently, it's gone up higher than that, and there's times more. But if we could just have $250,000 to put in our surplus every year, we could do so much more for the people in need in our city. We could do so much more to help fix up our beach. We could do so much more for that. And if anyone came forward with a plan to fix up the beach, to fix up the crate, and we can make $250,000 a year doing it, I'd bond that out too. Honestly would. So the question becomes if, are we getting a good deal? $7.2 million is a lot of money. There needs to be appraisal on that. Absolutely. And can those numbers make sense? And Mike brings up a good point. If the last time this was discussed, if the numbers didn't come, then that's certainly cause for her concern. If there's a lot of this, like as the docks need to be replaced. The naked turtle, how successful has that been? The city's not good at running businesses. We could rattle off examples of that for a long time. The city beach is the one that comes to mind. And I get worried about this because 20 years is a long time. If I think Chris Rosenquist can do it perfectly, he's not going to be the mayor for the next 20 years. If I think this council, Jamie Canales, Elizabeth Gibbs, would be the people to spearhead this, we're not going to be councilors for 20 years either. So this is certainly a risk. And I'm one of these people, as with the mayor talked, is kind of on the fence. I've got a lot of calls, I've got a lot of emails from constituents A lot of them are from constituents I know and who I greatly value their opinion. Most of them have been negative, not all of them. There have been some people that have contacted me and are positive on this. And I think everyone is of the agreement that if we can make $250,000 a year, and at the end of it, own 11 more acres of our waterfront, this is a good deal. So the question is, how sure are we that that if is a yes? And if we can be certain, then it's a risk we take. If we're uncertain, if we don't think the city can manage this, and Jeff brought up a very good point. Our marina, we have been contracting it out because it's by far the best way to do it. We couldn't seem to be running our marina, the city running its marina directly in any way, shape or form, but contracting out runs its problems. And he's right, the last business we had respond to the RFP, the only business we had respond to our RFP is the Plattsburgh Boat Basin. And if we don't get people to run, the restaurant's another one. I can't see city staff running the restaurant. And it's been a successful restaurant. It's got a fantastic location. I personally.
Mike's retired, and I know that he likes to flip burgers, so Mike's Burger Chef.
That would be a challenge.
I would trust Mike more than most others to run. So,
yeah,
it's not an easy decision. It's a very difficult decision. The risk is there. The benefits, they could be dramatic. If we could make it to 200,000, like I said, that's an easy question. So we have to do our due diligence. We have to do right by the taxpayer because we cannot risk $7.2 million. You know, we get good favorable bond prices too, but we have to do our due diligence. And if this is an appropriate investment, you know, because it's not the first thing the city needs to do. On our priorities, owning a marina, owning another marina, owning a bigger marina. Ms. Mannion brought up a good point, and I know the mayor has brought this up too. This, with the economies of scale, connecting with our marina, which is right next door to it, I could see room for expansion, room for getting more out of both marinas. But then again, like I said, I don't know anything about running marina. So if we do our due diligence and the investment makes sense, I can see it working. Otherwise, it is a big risk. And I think if there's a lot of questions about the if, then maybe we want to take a step back, but that's my perspective.
Thank you.
Respond to something Patrick said, please. That, what I was talking about was history. William Faulkner said that past isn't past, but past isn't dead. It isn't even past. Past isn't dead, it isn't even past. And other people have said those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. I remember the same giddiness being expressed with very similar numbers about the Plattsburgh City Marina 6 years ago. I remember that. So let's not repeat history. If we vote no on this, Mayor Rosenquist is perfectly within his rights to continue to pursue it. He can go do the due diligence while we wait patiently to hear from him. And that's what I hope he would do. I hope he would come back to us and say, hey guys, yes indeed, we did find out that we're going to make a solid $250 a year on this. But until I have more assurance that this thing is going to work, and this piece of paper here, by the way, doesn't convince me. I can't believe this.
Thank you. All right, so, yeah, I mean, look, I've had the same emails, people in favor, people opposed, people on the fence, right? It's just the nature of it, I think. I do want to address a couple things. Over the last several years, we've talked about, and we're in legal battle with our town partners over an annexation, over the potential to generate revenue, tax revenue for development. Sure, there's a potential there. We don't know what that potential is, but we were willing to step into that fight and cost some relationship over time. Thankfully, that is passed, and we're now looking at an actual opportunity to develop that property in a meaningful way. No, the city, there are certain businesses that the city does run, and we do it well. We collect garbage, we profit on garbage, we do that well. We deliver you water, fresh water, and we take your sewer water away, and we do that pretty well. We deliver electricity, and we charge for these services as well. Okay? One thing that I'm a little, I don't want to say frustrated by, but I'm not going to put words into our city leadership now, the people who actually do the work. But, and they've been working hard. They've been working very hard. And every single day when I talk to our department heads, there is something new that they've produced for the taxpayer, for the city. To say that we haven't done work at the beach, we've done a significant amount of work at the beach. We've invested in the beach. We've improved the beach and beach access. This council approved the hiring of Saratoga Associates to actually implement a plan that was been developed for the beach. That includes finding grants, doing the work to develop the beach, doing the work to make it more attractive. So that's work that we're doing. Sailor's Beach has been open. I've heard people say, well, there's a concrete block out there and you can't access it. Sailor's Beach has been open. And I will say this, I can't even argue with you that the city has been horrible at taking care of the things that we got. I just can't argue. That's the truth. If there's anything about this that's true, that is the truth. But at some point, we also have to say, we can do both. We can both improve what we have, and we can grow and expand. We can do both. Now, it's gonna take some time, and there's habits to be built, and you don't quite know it's the truth until you see it repeatable over time, and then you finally say, okay, actually, you know what? Yeah, we're fixing the bridge at Sailor's Point Park, and we know that we are, and everybody on this council knows that we are. So to say that we're not, or it's a shame that it's not available, well, look, it's been years in the making that the bridge is gonna fall apart overnight, right? The bridge has been falling apart. There hasn't been money allocated to it. There hasn't been money allocated to a lot of the things that we're fixing up and that we have fixed up. The Parks Report. This council published a Parks Report in partnership with DPW and Community Development for that exact reason. For the exact reason that we don't take care of the things that we got. And it addresses a lot of those concerns. Based on that, the bathrooms are open. There are buildings, like you noted, like we've all noted, that are in disrepair that we need to invest in. And I think that there's attitude on this council to do that. We've talked about tearing the northern bathhouse down, tearing the building down at Sailor's Beach. We talked about these things, right? So it's not a matter of we're not doing it. It is a matter that we haven't done it. But at sometime we have to turn the page and say we are doing it. And we have to trust that there's an attitude to do it, that there's a mentality to do it, that there's a commitment to continue to invest in the things that we have. What's the greater good? I look at this in long and short, right? The short of it is, yes, projected on the initial view of it, it looks to be very lucrative for the city. If you want to talk about annexing property and the opportunity to generate revenue or the need to generate revenue, and then the potential for what that revenue can do for our community. You look at that, you're like, yeah, it needs to be filled in, but it's an initial pass, okay? That's why we're even having this conversation. If the initial pass, if we looked at the initial pass and said, negative $100,000 at the bottom, but we can reclaim 11 plus acres of waterfront property in the heart of our downtown forever, you couldn't justify one for the other. We wouldn't even have this conversation. So there is the need to do that deep dive. There is the need to fine tooth comb this. In terms of who has the expertise, I've built my career on this. Jamie Canales, we've heard people in the audience, you know, who have a career in this. This is what we do. It's what I've done. Right? Is it my specific expert to marinas? No. Right? I'm not, you know, we can talk about, you know, Richard Marks would probably be the better person to talk about taxes and loss of tax rate, and certainly it's a concern losing tax money for school partners and county partners, and doesn't mean that we can't figure that out. It means that we should figure that out, right? Just like we figured it out with the town. We figure it out with our partners. We don't just leave our partners in the lurch. You know, part of the Plattsburgh Compact was making those impacted agencies that were losing tax revenue whole. Why would we not do the same thing for our own taxpayers? Why can't they also share in the benefit of increased revenue for the city? The process itself isn't, we go into an agreement, we choose a number, we agree on a number, we go into agreement, then here's the check. Done deal. It's not that. This is like the first step of it. And a lot of that is digging in. Buyer beware. Buyer beware. You don't buy a house and just sign a check without doing an inspection, without appraising it, without walking through, without making sure that the foundation isn't crumbling, the whole thing. You do the work. And then finally you say, actually, you know what? This isn't worth what I am offering. It's worth this. And then you work that out. No difference here. But when it does come down to it, what does it mean for the city of Plattsburgh to be in 100% control over the most valued piece of property in the heart of our downtown? And how does that feed back into who we are as a lake city, who we are as an economic driver, who we are as the largest New York city on this side of Lake Champlain, on the New York side of Lake Champlain? That has and owns and can generate revenue from our own marina or from our own waterfront. You guys have heard me say this hundreds of times regarding leverage our natural resources in a responsible, reliable, and sustainable way to generate revenue. And that's what this is. Now, do I think like, hey, we should just go in this blindly? Absolutely not. Dig in, do the homework, do the math. Get the financials, dig in. And that would be the work that we would be required to do. Otherwise, it's pointless. You don't just do business that way. Now, that also doesn't mean that we make this agreement and then I go off and do my own thing. We make this agreement. We all work together. We can all work together to do this due diligence. We all work together to work through these details. We can hire an external partner to do that. We can leverage community relationships that would do it for free, that are experts in this. But then at the end of the day, we bring back this package that says, this is the long and short of it. These are the details. This is what the proposal is. And then we as a team then make that decision. That's what the proposal is. It's not just Rosenquist unilaterally making some decision for the future of our community, put it back.
Well, I think we should move for roll call on it.
Well, there's some questions, I get it. So if we go forward with it, obviously we don't vote on it to pass today.
Correct.
We send it to the council.
Correct.
If we go forward with it and we go forward and we purchase the property, do we have any plans for it, or other than just running the marina, combining it with our marina and expanding it? What is our
See, that,
future?
and I believe that would be part of that due diligence period, is to create that entire vision. What's the immediate look like in settling operations? What's the next 5 years looks like? What's the next 3 years look like in terms of expanding or growing or incorporating Wilcox Dock into this process? That would be part of this whole, that would be part of the due diligence, that would be part of the package that then is then presented back to the council to then make that final determination on do we sign a check or do we not sign a check? Because it's not gonna be, and I don't think it's fair for it to be just a handful of people over here making a decision. It's gotta be, all that work has gotta come back to the council to make that final decision. But part of that conversation is what does that grant plan look like? Including partnering with our grant writer to say, what are the kinds of grants that can contribute to this opportunity? And that's gotta be part of that mix too.
And, yeah, I'm curious, because, Jamie mentioned 3.17 acres that we might be able to develop in the future. I think about what Denise said and what Mike said, especially too, is open access for the rest of the people in the city.
100%.
I don't own a boat, would like to, but I don't expect to anytime soon. But I'm very invested in the waterfront. Boardwalks on the waterfront sound fantastic to me. The other person I want to hear a lot from is Richard, because the numbers are really what matters in this scheme. Because I see it as an investment. If it makes money, good. And at the end of it, if we make $250,000 a year, and at the end of 20 years, we own 11.4 more acres of our waterfront, that is a win in any shape or form. If it makes less than $250,000 a year and we own waterfront, and we're still making money, even then, I still like the idea. If we lose money, you brought up, even if we lose a little money, we still own, at the end of 20 years, we still own 11 acres of our waterfront. So what matters is the investment sound, is that, so that's the prime concern for me. But, going forward, there's a lot of ideas we can do. And combining it with our marina, like what you said with Wilcox Dock, opening it up to the public more, I am curious as to what we can do and what our options are going forward, definitely.
Well, I think the whole point that most of us have is that this sales agreement is premature. We need to do our due diligence now, look a little deeper into it before we jump into a sales agreement. There are penalties if you do not follow through on this agreement. I do not believe it makes sense to spend any more of our taxpayers' money on something that we haven't looked at thoroughly.
Taxpayer money will be hooked into this. And, I made it very clear, I am in favor of development. I could possibly be in favor of buying into this as well, but there is not enough information for me to support this at this time. I'm not saying never.
No, sure.
I'm not saying never. I don't want to make that really
I
clear
understand
to
that.
everybody here. I'm just saying right now, all the things that, we all have our various inputs here. There is an enormous missing component of information that we don't have, and I am not convinced we will get everything we need in 2 months' time. That is not a lot of time, especially if any of the things that we request are going to require hiring somebody to do that, and if that goes to RFP, that's a process.
What do you, in terms of?
I don't know.
No,
That's
no, no,
what
what do
I
you mean, like in terms of hiring somebody to go after RFP, to do what, to do some of this analysis?
do some of the analysis that we can't do ourselves in-house. I mean, that's all the process. This is what I'm saying back to Mary.
Well,
Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah, please.
My original point was, as a council, this is what we should be doing. We should be sitting down as a council, and every single person comes up with a list of inquiries that we feel need to be made in order to determine, is this feasible? What's the cost benefit analysis and all the other various things that we've talked about. That's a completely different work session where we sit together as an entire body and discuss what we want to know. We're not going to get the information, all the information I think we need in the 2 months' time. I think it is very attractive pursuit, but premature because there's too many other things we don't know. That's all I'm saying.
And I will say, look, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to postponing, I'm not opposed to doing some of this work, but this is also a business deal, right? So part of it is how does the buyer or how does the seller protect themselves in this process too? They're not just gonna open their books to just anybody else, right? There needs to be some type of agreement that protects them as well.
That's why we have lawyers.
Oh, no.
That's what the lawyers get paid for,
No,
to
I
figure out
get
how to do
I
this
get
kind of non-disclosure confidential work if we decide to pursue it, but 2 months' time is not enough time. It's not enough time.
Well, I will let you know that from my experience, it is time. It is time. You will have enough time to do it. it's just very like, you gotta be focused on it. And I'm not saying, at first it was like a month. We're like, no, that can't happen. But I will say from my own experience, it is sufficient time to put something together and do the actual work that's sufficient to make a decision, okay? Just from my experience.
I'm glad collaboration is needed. So,
Oh, I agree.
yeah,
I agree. I'm not
2
disagreeing.
months, 2 months is more than enough time.
That is.
I promise you.
Well,
I know, I'm just telling you, I am not convinced.
I'm just saying from my experience, having done deals like this, right? So it's,
Well, I think Elizabeth makes a good point about RFPs and deciding, who we want to do what. It could take 6 weeks to find the right party to do, some sort of analysis for us. I could see that happening quite easily. Government doesn't move at the speed of light,
I know.
So, these things can take time. I would suggest that the council would vote no on this. Please allow Mayor Rosenquist to continue his quest for a new marina and bring us all the evidence as quickly as he can, and heck, he may do it quicker than 2 months. Vote no now so that we don't have the taxpayer money on the hook. Let him continue to do his thing, and let's reconvene when we have all the facts. That would be my suggestion. Right now, we're putting a lot of money on the hook, a lot of the taxpayers' money on the hook if we sign this agreement tonight.
This is not
We're
a
not signing.
signature design. This is not a design.
Yeah, there goes another week or so while we wait for the next council meeting to make it official. So that would make me tend to say even more, vote no.
Well, do you have questions you want to put forth now that we can maybe get answers to in a week? If it comes up to the council, we can always.
Actually, it's a pretty complicated issue, and it's gonna take more than a week or a few days. We need to compile all our information that we need, like Councilor Gibbs said, and consolidate it and find out what we really need to know answers to it. There's no reason to rush on something as important
I
as.
agree. There is
There's
no
no-
rush. And I think that is so important here.
Do it right.
I cannot stress that enough. Several of us have been on the council for a number of years. And I can think of many occasions where we were made to feel like there's a rush and mistakes were made. We cannot make mistakes with $7 million purchase. We just cannot do that. I am in favor of pursuing the inquiry process, but I am not gonna do it if I feel like, hurry up, we gotta get this done. That's not doing my punishments. And I'm a little even more leery if someone is telling me we need to hurry up. That makes me feel even more reticent to put my support.
Well, but I don't think, I hear you saying.
No, I know,
But just to be clear, I don't think 2 months is a hurry up period. I think 2 months is a very fair timeline. And I'm letting you know, if I asked you how to write an English paper, I trust that you would know how to do that.
but an English paper is gonna cost you $7 million.
No, understood.
Because if it did, that'd be one heck of a deal.
No doubt, but I'm saying, all I'm saying is the professional expertise, right? Like, this is where we're at. I understand from a lot of people's perspective that 2 months is not a lot of time. In my experience, it's plenty of time if the work effort is focused and specific to addressing some of those questions. Now, I'm not opposed to postponing, but there's also a risk in that too, in terms of postponing a signing of an agreement. There's also
The risk that the property might get sold to someone.
Sure, of course.
How long has the
And that's
property,
fine.
how long has the property been on the market?
Couple years, minus COVID, but they've had interest in my understanding, there has been interest. And coming out of COVID, understanding that there's potential for border opening, the whole thing, right? I'm not saying that to create fear or urgency. I'm just saying that because there is that potential that we can certainly go to them and say, hey, look, what do y'all think? Can we work together to do some of this work without going into this agreement or having some other type of agreement? But there is also the understanding that the work that we put into it, if we do hire professional services, which doesn't require our fee, if we hire professional service to help us with this, that's also money that's,
Yeah.
okay, and look, I'm fine with that, but we also have to understand that there's time of the essence, and the buyer is not gonna be, or the seller is not gonna sit around and wait.
Well, I must say, it's not a total disaster if it remains on the tax roll. It's not a wipe out by any stretch. So,
We can have Richard talk about that, we can have Richard talk about, some of the past history of, if you have that information, past history of marine operations, but we can talk about the tax piece as well.
I mean, what I'm curious is about, because I'm hearing, concern of moving too fast, which I think is loud. Like, I certainly don't like to move too fast, especially on something this important. But what I was hearing is that there might be some dichotomy with, information sharing and stuff like that, up until the agreement is signed, and there's some things that need to wait until after the agreement is signed.
Sorry, say it again?
So, obviously, the agreement has a 2-month due diligence
Correct.
period.
Yes.
And I'm getting the sense that there's certain things that we cannot look into until the agreement is signed. Is that correct?
Correct, and that's partially the privacy piece of going to somebody and say, hey, I'm gonna open all of your financials without some type of certainty or without some type of assurance that their information is gonna be protected. And then also, mind you, if there's some agreement between two parties about the purchase, that they're taking that thing off of the market too. They're taking their business off of the market, and they're taking a risk if somebody does come along and say, oh, well, I'll offer you 8. Well, they can't just come out of the agreement and say, well, tough. We're gonna negate the agreement with the first signer and go with the person who's offering more.
So I guess, is there certain information that people want that we can get before an agreement is signed? Or is all the information that we're looking for only stuff that would come to us after we sign an agreement?
It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a deep dive into tax returns and a financial audit, then that has to come after signing the agreement. Because again, that's part of the protection that they're gonna have with their privacy, right? And that's part of the sale agreement is that NDA or the non-disclosure piece to going into that type of agreement.
Sure, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Right, especially with the public nature of this. The one thing I'd be curious to see before an agreement is signed is an independent appraisal, and I know Elizabeth had asked for that. But
then again, it just goes back to and that's part of the due diligence. They can do their own appraisal, we can do our own, right? And per Councilor Kelly's question is, can we find somebody that is completely independent, not in the area that focuses on marina work, right? And that we can identify as a resource for something like that. We can, but again, if what's the protection for the city if we do that and we get that back and at the same time it's sold, right? Then what, right?
it's not a disaster.
If we would use that data for future prospects.
Yeah, but
Does the marina business even make sense in this day?
But all I'm saying is I wouldn't hire an appraisal for this property to then say, I'm gonna apply it to something else, that's all.
Yeah, well, it's a valid question, Mr. Mayor, because for the simple reason that there's a vast difference between what it's assessed for and what's the claimed value. So, yes, we do need to look into that.
No,
It's quite a difference.
Council, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't, we absolutely should, and that should be part of our final determination on whether or not this is a value project. Again, we're not gonna relate it back to you selling a house. If I say my house is worth 500,000, and you say, no, it's worth 4.5, 450, and then it comes back appraised at 3, you're not gonna pay 4. We're gonna renegotiate, we're gonna figure that out.
Yeah, we could do that up front, though. I think that's what everybody is kind of saying is we want to get a few basic facts before we go dive right into an agreement.
Not a few,
Okay.
a lot of
I
facts.
stand corrected.
I think we should move to vote on this. I think we've discussed it at length and a full view of the public.
Roll call.
Counselor Canales?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Gibbs?
No,
Counselor Talon? Yes. Counselor McFarland?
Tell you what, I'm voting yes, but, I'm not sure I'm gonna vote any week.
Counselor Moore?
No,
3 yeses and 2 noes. Mayor Rosenquist?
Yes, I'll move it to the floor. All right, 3.1, draft resolution authorizing budget transfer general fund city recreation parks. Motion. Councilor Canales, second. Councilor Gibbs, discussion.
Yeah, can you give an explanation on this too? I mean, I read it, but can you give an explanation anyway?
Sure.
Thank you.
In 2019, the council approved budget included $97,000 of change in the city recreation parks budget lines. The council approved budget for 2021 included a total of $69,350, so roughly a $28,000 reduction from 2019. We still have the same number of parks, the same number of responsibilities, just considerably less money that was allocated for this year than was allocated in 2019. So this request is requesting and accommodate an additional appropriation from the council of $25,000 spread over 5 separate budget lines to bring us more in line with that 2019 appropriation to the parks, to allow us to continue to operate them and maintain them properly for the rest of the season.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 3.2, draft resolution authorizing budget transfer general fund for striking contract services. Motion. Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Gibbs, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Seeing any new business to come before this council, this committee?
Oh, yeah, I have something.
Yeah, what's up? You introducing your local last night?
Yes, I am. I'm gonna introduce local, P,
I don't know, I've never introduced someone.
I think it's P3.
I don't know.
Say that again. P3?
I think it's
It
P3.
would be P3 in 2021.
I think it's P3.
I think it's P3 too. Yep.
You really need to let I think it might be before, that's the problem. Didn't we have 3 already? I could go check.
Can you hand it out, please? Can you hand it out?
Absolutely.
Do you want me to go check? Later? Well, I need to introduce.
Yeah, and I certainly don't mind introducing, but please just make sure that you send it beforehand, so we're prepared.
We don't know this, we never heard of it.
I'm pretty sure it's P3, but does trucks?
No, that's okay, it's fine.
I did something good. But, I think it's P3, 2021. And I would like to schedule a, public hearing for, this would be
17th? 1 week's time?
No, it's gonna be over.
No, it's
It's gonna be 2 weeks?
At least.
it's gotta be 10 days.
10 days, so we're looking at the next regular meeting? After next Thursday?
So that would be July 1st.
July 1st?
Yes.
Is that
July
sufficient?
3rd. No, sorry.
July 1st.
Yeah, you're right, July 1st.
Is that sufficient, Patrick?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay.
Unless, because we don't have a meeting on the week of the 21st through the 25th, correct?
Yeah, you know what, our next regular meeting is next Thursday, and then our meeting after that is the 1st. Correct.
So July 1st,
What time?
at 5 o'clock.
No need discussion.
I'm not noticing or talking about it or noticing.
Okay, good. Any further business come before this committee? Motion to adjourn, please. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Do you like